Hey YouTube, thank you so very much for tuning in again. My name is Damien. I'm going to go ahead and talk to you about a ball python. Ball pythons are commonly known as royal ball pythons. In Africa, people refer to them as the alien-skinned snake or the alien snake. Now you're probably wondering why the alien snake or the alien skin snake. Well, it gets its name directly from what it sounds like. They do in fact have patterns on their skin that look or resemble the face or the head of an alien. Ball pythons are also what you would call constrictors. They are part of the anaconda or the boa family. They are known as boids. Now, what boas and anacondas and pythons have are just a very, very large, bulky, massive body that are full of muscles. These muscles are specialized in constriction. What they do is they wrap around their prey and squeeze their prey. Now, a lot of times people have a tendency to think that when they squeeze, they're, breaking their necks, squeezing their bones, breaking bones, crushing them. That's actually false. That is not what they're doing. Is it possible that they break limbs or bones as they're squeezing? Most definitely. There's a very high chance of that. But what they're really doing is they're focusing on their lungs. As the snake constricts or, wraps around and tightens around that prey item, that mouse or that deer or the bird, what it's doing is it's focusing on the lungs, waiting for it to feel where the lungs expand and contract. Every time the lungs get bigger, they'll feel for that. As soon as they exhale, the lungs get smaller. They will then tend to wrap tighter and squeeze and focus all their strength on that portion of that body. Then it just continues over and over again until they have no more lung to expand because it's squeezed, it's shut. And then at that point in time, they suffocate, they pass out, and then they are able to be eaten. So, unlike rattlesnakes and cobras and other type of venomous snakes, they lack venom. Now, talking about venom and teeth, you're thinking, well, it doesn't have teeth, it can't bite, right? Well, that's again a false. We can bite, we have teeth. So something that you need to know is that ball pythons or snakes in general, there's two different ways, or three actually, three different ways that snakes are able to subdue their prey. First is by constriction, such as this snake right here. Then there is venom, envenomation, like rattlesnakes. They have these very specialized teeth called fangs. Fangs are like needles that are able to pierce into the skin or into the body and then inject venom through these grooves, specialized grooves through their teeth that are able to then allow the venom to go through their tooth and then into the body. Now, if they don't have fangs, snakes, we're talking, if they don't have fangs, they're not venomous. Okay? Now, fangs can be a little tricky now because there are many different locations, placements of where fangs can be located. So there are front fangs, there are kind of mid fangs, and then there's fangs that are way in the back. Now, anyways, fangs are fangs. It doesn't matter where they're placed or located. If they have fangs, they're venomous. Now, obviously, no one here is going to want to get up close and personal to a snake to identify if it has fangs or not, to see if it's venomous or not. Nevertheless, the next way, or the next way that animals or snakes subdue their prey is actually just by overpowering it. They do not constrict, and they do not envenomize or inject venom. What all they do is they just pretty much wrap around their food or bite their food, and they just use pure muscle in their body and their mouth and actually just start eating it like spaghetti, if you will. I mean, it kind of, whatever. That's besides the point. So anyways, those are the three different ways of how snakes are able to capture, subdue their prey, and then consume their prey. If you notice, this particular snake here is constantly sticking out her tongue. This snake is extremely curious, and something that a lot of people don't understand or know about snakes is that snakes, in fact, are able to smell with their tongue. They do have a nose. They do have nostrils. Those nostrils are there to help. I don't know if you can see. The camera's a little poor. I apologize. But they do have a pair of nostrils at the tip of their snout. And they also have these little holes on their upper lip. There it is right there. So those nostrils allow them to breathe. They have a very special, advanced trachea that they are able to stick out of their mouth as they are eating and consuming large prey items. Because as we all know, when we eat something and it's too large, we can't breathe and swallow at the same time, or eat something. So we have to kind of wait until we swallow it, because that's how people choke, right? Well, the cool thing about snakes is that they have this adapted or modified trachea. It's like a straw or a snorkel, if you will, that is able to stick out of their mouth or move and manipulate around whatever they're eating through their throat. And it's able to allow them to continue to breathe. Because if you think about it also, how long is it going to take a snake to eat something pretty large? You know, it's not just like, okay, done, let's go on. No, it could take 5, it could take 10, 15, 20 minutes to swallow, even an hour, depending on the snake, depending on what it's eating. So with that being said, they can't hold their breath that long, nor, it's just not safe. So with that being said, they have that modified trachea. Now, going to those little pits, those little tiny holes that you see on the upper lip, underneath their nostrils. Those are called loreal pits. Loreal pits are heat-sensing pits. So in pitch black, at midnight, at the forest floor, when there's canopies, trees hanging over, blocking all the moonlight, anything, it's like just pitch black. This animal could still see or sense predators or prey. Now, something about when I'm talking about sensing is, again, they are able to see very little through their eyes. They don't have the best of vision. They do not have ears. They do not have ears, so they don't really hear. I mean, they are capable of hearing, but it's in a completely different method. It's different. So they don't have ears, physical ears, and they are able to touch or feel, sense vibrations throughout their entire body. They have these little receptors across, just along their entire body, that allows them to feel and touch every little tiny vibration in the ground. They smell using their tongue. Now, there is a specialized organ that snakes have, even some lizards, called the Jacobson's organ. Now, how that works is it's pretty much every time that tongue comes out of their mouth, and mind you this, or remember that snakes and some lizards do have a forked tongue. It's kind of like a split tongue, or a Y or a V. And people don't know why they have that, or why they constantly stick it out. Maybe as soon as they see a snake sticking out its tongue, they think they're going to eat them or bite them. That's not necessarily true. The reason why they stick their tongue out all the time is because that's how they smell. They are adapted to be able to stick that tongue out, which is also wet, covered in their own saliva, and that saliva helps make things stick to it. Little particles floating in the air. So you know how, like, when you turn on like a projector or a flashlight in your room, and you kind of like hit your mattress or your sheet or whatever, your carpet, and you see like little dust particles float, in the air through the light. Well, those little tiny particles, maybe not the dust, but some dust too, sure. But those little tiny things, those microscopic things that we cannot see, land on their tongue and then capture it, bring it back into their mouth, and they have these two holes in the upper roof of their mouth that allow them to send those messages, those little smelling, things that they just captured to their brain. And that is how they identify or smell. Now, going back to why it's split, it's for depth, for direction. It's the same reason why we have 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, 2 ears, 2 hands, and even 2 feet. Is because, first of all, it would be very difficult for us to hear or find out where certain sounds are coming from because of one ear. We would have to turn our head the entire time looking for that sound to identify the right direction of where it's coming from. So having 2 ears helps us. Plus, it will look weird. But also 2 eyes. That helps with direction and more peripherals. If we only have 1 eye, then we would only be able to see just so much over here and so much over here. But because we have 2, we could see over here, we could see over here, we could see all the way in front of us. But then not only that, it also allows us 1 eye to identify or look and see one item or one object, and the other eye is able to see another object, but farther or closer. And that is what kind of tells us how far something is, because we have 2 eyes to judge, to base that judgment off of. Okay? Now, going back to the split tongue, I apologize. I go off topic all the time, but now you have a better understanding of what's going on here, okay? So, split tongue. When it comes out, if there's a scent coming from the right coming to the snake and it touches that tongue, the majority of that scent is going to be on the right side, the right, split portion of the tongue. So when it comes back inside, the majority of it's over there. So it's kind of like a radar, and they're able to identify until it's evenly placed or covering that animal's tongue. Does that make sense? Now, the pythons have those physical holes on their upper roof or the upper lip, their upper mouth, okay, their upper jaw. Boas, on the other hand, also have loreal pits, but those loreal pits are actually underneath scales. So you will not be able to physically see those characteristics, those holes, those physical holes on their mouth. But they do also have nostrils. All snakes have nostrils, so don't confuse those holes, those pits for the nostrils. Nostrils are kind of at the top tip, and the pits are going to be right above the upper lip. Okay? Anyways, snakes have an adaptive or a modified... The snake's not going to allow me to flip its head over. But snakes are fully capable of eating and swallowing things that are probably 1.5 to 2, maybe even 3 times their body size. Just, again, depending on what species of snake, because some certain snakes prefer to eat certain things or certain animals. And they are ambush predators, but also they are opportunistic feeders or predators, which means that when it's time to eat, they may take that opportunity because they have no idea if they're going to be able to find food tomorrow or the next day or the next day. And you're thinking, what do you mean? They don't eat every day? No, they don't eat every day. Is it possible for them to eat every day? Possibly. But the thing is that you have to remember that they are cold-blooded. So we'll come back to that in just a little bit. And that does play a factor, play a part in this animal's digestive system. Okay? Now, when they eat something so large, you have to think, or look how small that neck is. Look how it does have a big head, but compare that head to the girth, to over here. Look how thick this body is, and look how small that head is compared to it. Now, this is the coolest part of this whole thing. They have this piece of skin right here underneath their bottom jaw that allows them to stretch. It's just like a whole bunch of an elastic bunch of skin all pushed together. And what all that skin does is when it comes time for them to eat or swallow something so large, that bottom mandible actually stretches open. It doesn't break open. It literally just stretches open. There's skin that just stretches So you're not going to see a hole or a cut here. It just stretches like a rubber band. Now, the top part of their mouth doesn't stretch open. But what their bottom and top part of their jaw can do, since they don't have hands to help them push down their food into their mouth or their throat, they have to have, first of all, very specialized teeth, which are recurved teeth. Their teeth are curved back kind of like hooks. So when they bite something, the food can't go back out. It has to continue going back in. Now, something else is that their mouth is fully capable of walking one side of their head or their mouth, literally one side of their jaw, top or bottom, not both at the same time. They can do it that too, but they can actually independently move one side of their jaw, then the other, bottom, top, bottom, top, bottom, top, over and over again to continue to walk that food into their mouth, so they could swallow it. Okay? So that is pretty impressive. And then they use their muscles, their body, the structure of their body with all their muscles that help them move and squeeze and constrict their body, their prey. They will use all those muscles in their body to continue to push and manipulate that prey item, whatever it just swallowed, all the way down into its stomach. Well, ball pythons tend to be a very small species of python. There are many different species of pythons. I'm not going to sit there and list all of them. I will list the ones that are at the top of my head, which is going to probably be the Burmese python, the reticulated python, the ball python, the rock python, the green tree python, and many more. Many, many more. I don't know them all. Anyways, ball pythons are one of the smaller species of snakes. They get to be about 3.5, 4, maybe 5 feet long. Maybe a little bit longer, maybe a little bit smaller, but on average, they're somewhere around that length. Going back to what I was talking to you about their cold-blooded. Cold-blooded does not mean that their blood is cold. Cold-blooded means that the way that they regulate their body temperature. Now you're thinking, well, why don't you just say that? Or why is it just referred that? I don't know. I'm not the one that made it up. That's just what it means. Warm-blooded, we are warm-blooded. Mammals are warm-blooded, which means that our movement creates heat. When we digest food, we create heat. When we breathe, when we're just alive, we create heat. Our body creates that heat. Now, I don't know the full reason how it works, but snakes, reptiles, are cold-blooded, which means that they do not produce their own heat. In order for them to regulate their body temperature, they have to use external factors or sources, such as the sun, the shade, the water, or even other things, such as in human care or captivity, if you will. We have heating pads. We have heat lamps. We have heating rocks. We have different ways to keep these snakes' body temperature up, if need be. But now, talking about their food and digesting because they're cold-blooded. Think of water. When you boil water, what happens? Particles it just starts boiling. It gets really active. The particles just start going up, evaporating, because it's just so hot. It's so intense. It's just active. But when you get cold water, and you continue getting cold, it becomes almost a solid state. It doesn't move. In fact, it turns to ice, which doesn't move. So you can kind of apply that method, that way of thinking, to snakes or reptiles. So the warmer it is, the more active it's going to be. The more active it's going to be, the faster things are able to digest in this animal's body. When the cooler it is, the digestive slows down, which means their metabolism slows down, which means that if they were to eat something right before it gets really cold and it stays cold for a long period of time, that item that it just ate, that prey item, is going to have a very difficult time digesting, and it possibly may even rot inside their body. So when keeping and feeding snakes, you have to keep all that in consideration. Of course, yes, there is heating pads to help keep its body warm, but some snakes, such as ball pythons, they actually go through like a dormant state. They don't go into hibernation, but they do go into a time where they just kind of stop eating. Ball pythons are notorious for that. So something that I would strongly recommend is before getting snakes, before getting a ball python, before getting any exotic animal, snakes are referred to as exotics. Domestic are going to be dogs and cats and maybe some fish. So that being said, strongly recommend you do some research prior to getting a snake. Figure out if it needs a heating pad, if it needs a heat lamp, if it needs a UV bulb, if it needs a grow bulb, if it needs supplements, if it needs certain types of substrates, bedding, if it needs wood shavings, if it needs to have sand or dirt, or if it needs to have bark. Does it need to have a tree in it? Is it a tree climber? Does it need water? Is it a swimming type of snake? Is it a species that lives in the water? Who knows? Is what you're feeding it or what you want to feed it what it's supposed to be eating? Maybe it's not eating it because it's not supposed to eat that. It may eat it, but it may not. So there's a whole bunch of different factors that come into play when getting snakes. I'm not saying it's hard or difficult, but I'm not saying it's easy either. So let's just keep all those things in consideration and think about it. Think twice before moving on and trying to get a snake as a pet. Okay? Now, talking about birth. Snakes, they do give birth. Obviously, they have to reproduce. If not, they would be extinct already. Now, the way that reptiles give birth is not all through eggs. Well, they don't all lay eggs. Let me rephrase. Now you're thinking, what do you mean? I thought all snakes or all reptiles came from eggs. Well, yes, but not all of them lay eggs. Let me go back. There are 3 different methods, 3 different ways that animals give birth. All animals. All organisms. Okay? Well, all animals. First is what you would call viviparous. Viviparous. Viviparous is the method of how something or an animal is born without any eggs. Okay, there's not an egg sac. There's a membrane. It's not a hard shell. Nothing. No eggs whatsoever. Like us, we are not born from in an egg. So we are what you would call viviparous. Now you have something called oviparous, which is just like birds, and some snakes, and some lizards. Oviparous means that they lay eggs. And then there is something called ovo viviparous. Yep, now we're getting somewhere. Ovo viviparous, which means produce the egg, carry the egg inside the body, and when it is time for them to hatch, they will actually hatch within the body, within the mother, and hatch inside and come out live as if there was no eggs. Now, you're thinking, wait, you're telling me that they carry these chicken-like hard eggs inside of their body until they're ready to hatch? How does that work? Well, no, I didn't say that they have chicken-like eggs. That when I say egg, you have to think about just some type of structure that is able to hold and grow this organism within. So the embryo has to be in some type of sac. That sac can be, aka, an egg. So it's some type of very malleable, bendable, flexible membrane, some type of like sac, if you will, like a bag, that is able to pop or tear open when they're ready to hatch. Now snakes, like boas, on the other hand, boa constrictors, which look similar to pythons, they do not lay eggs. They are what you would call ovoviviparous. Pythons, this one, is what you would call oviparous. They lay eggs. Big difference. So there are some differences. There are some characteristics that are different from boas and pythons. So going back, the L'Oreal pits, they have heat sensing pits, correct? They have the physical pits on their upper lip that allow them to sense heat. Now, boas, on the other hand, boa constrictors, they do not have those physical holes on their upper lip. They do have them, but they're hidden. So that is another way to tell if it's a python or a boa. Something that I forgot to mention earlier is that snakes are what you would call predators, which we all know that. But now, some people have a tendency to say or look at their eyes and ask or see or notice that they have cat eyes. And so people say, it has cat eyes. It's a venomous snake. I'm not going to touch it. I'm not going to hold it. I don't want to near it. I'm probably even going to kill it because it's venomous. Well, that's a misconception. Just because it has eyes that look like cats, slits, vertical or pupils, that does not mean that it's venomous. In fact, this is a very interesting thing. Something that I just actually learned. Cats. Cats have, obviously, that's where they get it from. Cats have those vertical pupils. They have slits. They have cat eyes, obviously. Why? Well, when are they active? Are they active during the day and sleep at night? Or are they going around, running around your house, tormenting and running around like chickens with their heads cut off in the middle of the night when you're trying to sleep? That's probably it. They're very active at night. That's what you would call nocturnal. Cats are nocturnal. Now, when this animal has cat eyes or slits, vertical slits, why? Well, why does it have those heat sensing pits? Because it lives in an area that has very little light and it needs to be able to see. But it doesn't rely mainly on their eyes, but they can use their eyes. And so if they have those pits because it's very dark, which means that these animals probably hunt at night when it's dark, right? It makes sense. This is a predator. It has slits. It has cat eyes. So why are these snakes, why are there animals, such as crocodiles, crocodilians as well, they also have slits? Does that mean that they're venomous? So all crocodiles, all boas, and all pythons, and all snakes, and all cats, they're all venomous because they have cat eyes? No. Yes, there are going to be some snakes that have cat eyes that also have venom. But that's just probably telling you, just because of the characteristic of the slit eyes, that they're nocturnal. They don't want... Now you're thinking, well, what does that have to deal with, why cat eyes being nocturnal? Well, I'm sure we all know what happens when you take a picture of yourself with your camera with a flash. Back in the old days, at least with the older cameras, that when you would look at the picture, your eyes would look like you're like possessed. They're red. Well, that's because the light that is reflected out of your eyes goes into your eyes and reflects out, and it reflects all these different things that we have in the back of our like blood vessels and such that are red. So that's what you see. You see that reflective color coming out of our eyes. Now, when you all drive and you see like a cat, like just a regular feral cat or a domestic cat in your driveway or on the road, and it just stops in the middle of the road and looks at your headlights, you see like a greenish, yellowish color reflection, right? Now, obviously, those are headlights. Those are very bright lights. That is not natural light. You're not going to have natural light like that in the wild. So keep that in mind as well. Nevertheless, these eyes are specifically meant to conceal or hide the reflection, to minimize the amount of light that is reflected out, because the holes, the pupils, are so small. It allows very little light to go back out. But even, unfortunately, it's a give-take type of scenario, because if it doesn't allow so much light out, it probably will stop light coming in. How do we have to see at night? We have to allow some light to go into our eyes as well. So it's a give and take scenario. But nevertheless, animals with cat eyes are probably nocturnal. Anyways, I could go on and on about these animals, and I'm sure there's so many different things that I forgot to discuss and talk about. But if you have any questions, any concerns, or anything that you would like to add to this presentation, anything that I left out, or something that I even said that seems wrong, please correct me. I want to know, I want to learn, I want to better myself, and I will go ahead and make a video to announce or say any modifications or corrections to my to this video. Thank you everybody again for tuning in. I hope everybody enjoyed this presentation. If you all like to see more videos like this content that I have provided today, please like this video, please share this video, and please subscribe. Thank you again. See you next time.